Hello, Jordan Sheridan live. It is Wednesday, April 12th, 2023 in the United Corporations of America. And another inferno spreading far and wide with highly dubious statements from the EPA, local health officials, and God knows what permeating throughout the air. So we're going to get into all of it. Obviously, we've been staying on East Palestine, and Lewis did a whole stream on that yesterday, but we have to get to the latest, which is a still ongoing fire in Richmond, Indiana, which is right on the border of Ohio. So although this is happening in Indiana, Ohio is probably getting hit for a second time in 2 months. And this is at a plastics recycling plant, which apparently had multiple violations as an unsafe plant, but nothing was done about it. Shocking. Unsafe plant and a fire hazard. So I guess let's just start with whatever the video we have. I know the live stream doc is kind of rocked and loaded, but this was yesterday afternoon. We don't know what started the fire yet, but there was plastics recycle. Smash the like button, by the way. Share this live stream. There was plastics inside the plant, outside the plant, pretty much everywhere. Colin, if you could play a video of the explosions that we have in whatever order you have them. So that is the chemicals coming out from the plastics fire. We'll share what the EPA and the health officials had to share. I'll just tell you from a conversation I had with an actual chemist. From what I heard, it's a bunch of mixed plastics, various plastics. So hopefully they had a good inventory of that in the least. However, that's kind of scary if they don't. Obviously, plastics burning can lead to dioxins, which, if you've been paying attention to East Palestine, you know the term dioxins, which are cancer-causing chemicals. In the air testing needs to include the possibility of everything or anything. I hope they learned the lessons from East Palestine. It sounds like they haven't, which we're going to get into.
Yeah, based on even just the snippets that we've heard, it's sounding eerily familiar from stances from the EPA.
Yeah, the chemist went on to say these plastics can generate and release pollutants like microplastics, biphenyls, and phthalates, neurotoxic and endocrine disruptors. So neurotoxic and endocrine system. Dioxins and furans are toxic, and when plastics are burnt, the ash produced from burning material that contains plastic and rubber are hazardous, and the fallout of that is settling on surfaces of all types, sadly. Hopefully they are tracking the plume well. I doubt it. Erin Brockovich got back to me just saying there's probably hundreds of chemicals in that smoke. So yeah, two of the ones of concern, these are just my own notes, this was shared by CNN as well as the health official, is styrene. Human health effects from exposure to low environmental levels of styrene are unknown. Workers exposed to large amounts of styrene could develop irritation of the eyes and breathing passages with long-term and large exposures. Workers using styrene have had injuries to their nervous systems, which that connects to what the chemist just told me about neurotoxic. There's also benzene concerns, which there have been people in East Palestine who have tested positive in their urine for benzene. The immediate signs and symptoms of exposure to benzene is drowsiness, dizziness, rapid or irregular heartbeat, headaches, tremors, confusion, unconsciousness, a whole lot of shit. But honestly, the jury's out. There's no way of knowing what is being released completely, and I don't really trust the EPA to accurately test or tell us. Colin, can we show some of the other just images I think you have from pretty much residents who are taking pictures there? up close. So that's pretty much from somebody's backyard. If you could full screen that, seems like basically very close to where the plant was.
Right. And from what I'm hearing too is that the blackness of the smoke, it feels even more like dark and black and ominous in person than it is coming through in some of the images as well. But to your point, I mean, I highly doubt they're going to have an exact manifest of what types of plastic are in the building. If from what my understanding is it's like a recycling plant, and it seems like they've had this stuff piled heavily in the building, outside of the building, all around the building. For it's been an issue for years, it seems like at this point, to kind of get to this point. There's no way they're going to know all of the different types of plastics that are there set on fire, let alone whatever else is mixed in within it. I have a hard time believing that they're going to be testing for nearly as many things as could be found inside of this mess.
Right. And by the way, we're going to get to this later, but the evacuation zone is only a half mile. They're not even, by the way, testing for air in the actual half mile because they say it's not safe.
Right.
So I'm not a doctor. If you live there, obviously make your own decisions, but I would get the hell out of there if I'm within 3 to 5 miles, frankly.
And just while we're on this, Colin, we actually do have the Google Maps of exactly where this is. This is like right in there's a neighborhood that this is essentially blowing over. If we could just pull up the Google Maps satellite view of this. I know we've got, this is, okay, so this, here we go. Yep. We'll give Colin a second to get it there, but this happened right in a neighborhood in the area. The link with the pin should still be right in the chat as well. And where the wind was blowing would be blowing this stuff from this facility right over this neighborhood. So the red pin is the area where the fire was, and the wind was blowing, from my understanding, definitely to the west, potentially a bit to the northwest, right over that area of a fairly dense neighborhood with houses in the area. If you actually zoom in, you can actually see on the kind of left side of the building and on the right side of the building, there is actual debris of some sort piled up. Very well could be some of the plastics and whatnot. We are hearing that stuff was packed up around the outside of the building. This image, I believe, is still from even a couple of years ago. So this is an ongoing thing. Obviously, this is not a current image, but can give you an idea of some of the stuff that is all piled around it. And you can also see it in the street view image. Thanks, Colin, for pulling that up. I think to the left, if you look, you can even see some of the plastics. That might not be the right spot, but that's all right. There's other images that we've got too of the plastics. There we go. Kind of all piled up amongst the side of the building. I mean, Jordan, I don't think that there's any way that they've got an inventory of all that shit piled up along the side of the building, let alone whatever the heck is inside of the building.
Well, first of all, I can't confirm it. I can't confirm it, but from what I'm hearing, the owner of the building is from LA. So, yeah, can't confirm, but that's what I've read. And yeah, that does not look like a safe inventory or storage. And we're going to play the clip from the mayor who is throwing the company under the bus, basically saying, well, we cited them multiple times as an unsafe facility, a fire hazard, but we were stuck. It was going through the courts and we couldn't shut them down. I don't know. I don't know Indiana law very well, but if this was such a fire hazard, then something needs to change. If the mayor or the governor could not shut down this factory. And by the way, this is not the only plastics or other potentially dangerous contaminant that their building code is not up to date, potentially have fire hazards. That's pretty much littered throughout the industrial Midwest. And for those of you watching, you probably know stories of factories or plants or whatever that are not necessarily the safest. Let's start with that, actually, from a press conference held this morning. The mayor basically, it's not on us. It's on the factory. We cited them multiple times as an unsafe factory and a fire hazard. Let's play that part, Colin.
So yes, this business owner had previously been cited by our Unsafe Building Commission and given an order to clean up the property. That order was ignored. We had been through a court case over that order. Our unsafe building order was upheld in that court case. We have been through several steps since then to order this particular business owner to clean up this property because we were aware that what was operating here was a fire hazard. So this was a fear for us and why we've taken so many steps to prevent this from happening. That business owner is fully responsible for all of this. We have the unsafe building order and the recorded court documents and everything that's ensued here, the fire, the damages, the risk that our first responders have taken and the risk these citizens are under are the responsibility of that negligent business owner. Today, my concern is with our first responders and our citizens. But once we get this fire under control, and I'm positive that everyone is safe, we will turn our full attention to continuing that process to hold this person responsible.
Mr. Mayor, what were you requiring from this property? Did it need sprinklers? What did you want from me?
There were a list of requirements that included cleanup and other safety measures to prevent this from happening. We will cover all of that once we make sure everyone's safe. I don't want to turn my attention just yet to the litigation behind this. I want to really keep my attention right now on the safety of our first responders and our citizens.
Well, we asked this question, Mr. Mayor, because are there others, not only in this city, but other cities where you go to court, you ask for something to happen, and here we are days later, now you have a disaster on your hand, which then impacts your first responders and your citizens. Are there other properties here in Richmond and maybe across the state that need to be taken action upon?
I can't speak to situations in other cities. I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I appreciate that the court upheld our ruling. And so we just wish that the property owner and the business owner would have taken this more serious from day one. This person has been negligent and irresponsible, and it's led to putting a lot of people in danger today.
Have you been in contact with that business owner since yesterday?
Yes, sir. One of our fire investigators made contact with the business owner last evening, but it's an ongoing investigation, so I'm not going to get into any more of that right now. We don't speak on ongoing investigations, but that contact was made last night.
Can you tell us if that person lives here in Richmond?
I do not believe they were a Richmond resident, but nearby.
I got a lot to say. What do you think on that?
I mean, I'm curious, obviously, without knowing all of the specifics of these kind of cases of the lawsuit that they had going on and everything. But you would think if they're cited multiple times and that the city won their side of the lawsuit, that they could have kind of forced the person to clean everything up. I'm curious to look more into the details. I mean, I think it's, is it necessarily like the city government's fault that this giant thing happened? Obviously, it's not going to be directly their fault, right? But if they had the authority to force the cleanup, I'm not sure why they didn't take it. The timing is a little unclear for me on some of that sort of stuff, though. So it's definitely still some digging that I want to do into that. But yeah, I mean, very quick to just say, yep, yeah, we tried to do what we could do, and we did it, and it's all on the paper and on the record, and the guy just didn't clean it up. I don't know. Yeah.
By the way, I don't know those. It's Indiana, so maybe a Republican. Don't you just get a vibe like that's definitely like a young and up and coming, ambitious, ruthless politician who's trying to move up, has eyes on, running for governor, maybe Senate. He's just been toiling around as mayor, but he's ready to. I get Pete Buttigieg vibes a little bit, not as nerdy. But if anybody's from Richmond and, has any dirt on the mayor, I just get weird vibes. By the way, smash that like button, share this live stream. We will have some updates on East Palestine at the end, which you don't know about. I just put it in the live stream doc. But here's a few things. Number one, let's say for argument's sakes, and thank you for the super chats. Keep those coming. We'll read them at the end. Let's say for argument's sake that his hands were tied in bureaucracy. They couldn't order him. How many residents in the nearby evacuation zone do you think the city alerted that this plant right next to you that has a cocktail of plastics that are flammable is not following code, is a fire hazard? You get in the mail if there's a sex offender on your block, good. You get in the mail if there might be certain things in your water. If you're lucky, you'll get that. But how many people you think in the community were notified that there's a lawsuit pending, that this plant isn't following code? I doubt it. Secondly, I know because I reported in East Chicago, Indiana, So it's Indiana, but it's called East Chicago. I know Indiana, at least under Mike Pence when he was governor, has some of the most lax environmental regulations in the United Corporations of America. So if you live in Indiana, you could say it in the chat. They're not big on regulations there. So, which would make sense that companies like this would be allowed to. We showed you how things look stacked up outside that warehouse. It would make sense. By the way, if you're a chemist or an expert in the chat, feel free to let us know if you know of information that we're not sharing. But as far as I know, and I just read from a conversation I had with a chemist earlier, you got potential microplastics. Let me read it one more time for those that came late. It can generate and release pollutants like microplastic, biphenyls, phthalates, which are neurotoxic and endocrine disruptors. And then the dioxins and the furans are toxic. And when plastics are burnt, the ash produced from burning material that contains plastic and rubber are hazardous. And the fallout of that is settling on surfaces of all types, sadly. Hopefully they're tracking the Plume well. Well, judging by East Palestine, I'm pretty sure they're not tracking the Plume well at all, because we showed, and Lewis caught this, an official with the EPA in East Palestine about 2 weeks ago admitted the EPA had modeled. So the derailment in East Palestine was on Friday, February 3rd. Come Sunday, 2 days after that, the EPA had modeled for a controlled burn, which is not even a real thing, just an explosion of one car. So they only modeled for the effects of that explosion, which direction it might go, environmental effects for one car. And then lo and behold, the next day, it's 4 cars. 5 total cars, 4 extras. The EPA certainly didn't have time to effectively model for that. Even if they did have time, I don't really know how you do effectively model for that. And we have questions about that whole thing anyway we're digging into, because I don't buy it. I don't buy what they're saying about the controlled burn. But in this case, I don't really know how they're going to effectively model for where this is going with wind patterns and et cetera, et cetera.
And
I just want to show you,
go ahead,
Colin, I don't know if you could pull it up quick. This is a Facebook post, which I thought was completely reckless from a journalist. Let me find it. I put too much in this document. And one second.
While Jordan's looking for that too, I mean, he mentioned dioxin, and they mentioned that, they're doing testing outside, and we'll get more into the specifics from actual commentary from the EPA, who are on scene right now, about the testing that's going to be done. But you're not going to just get a test sample and results for dioxin right away. So I'm very curious to see how quickly they tell these folks who live close by to this that things are okay to go back to. And not to mention, for those of you who don't remember, the scary thing with dioxin is that it's heavier than air. So right now, and several of these other chemicals of concern that we don't even know what they all are yet are going to have similar cases to that, where much of it will be heavier than air. So right now it's all being carried up with the thermal energy in that freaking black cloud that you're seeing and spreading out. But it will then start to settle down, as Jordan had mentioned, that the chemist that he spoke with is saying will start to settle down in your neighborhood, in your grass, on your car. Some of it can get inside of your home, all of this stuff. And then that's when it starts to become a level of concern here. Dioxin doesn't just go away. It's not water soluble. It's not like it's going to just kind of like trickle away and oh, okay, we washed it and now it's all good. This sort of stuff is the kind of thing that if it lands in your yard and you plant your garden and you plant some Brussels sprouts and like seeds for Brussels sprouts, and it's in that soil, the Brussels sprouts or other vegetables will actually take in the dioxin, and it will be part of the finished product that you're going to be eating, the Brussels sprouts or whatever it may be. And then you can ingest it, and it's now a part of you. If livestock eat grass, they're grazing fields, they eat grass that has this in it. It gets into the cow. It can pass it on to its offspring. It can pass it on, if it's a dairy cow, into the milk that it's made. So it's a very big concern, especially when you start to see this stuff happening in East Palestine, here in Indiana, and all of the other, scary events that we're starting to, see more and more frequently, it seems. It's a major, major concern.
And Keep talking for a little bit. I'm finding this.
Yeah, you're good. So the dioxin, definitely an issue. But again, to the point that I started to make on this is the issue is where the EPA is in town right now. They've got a half a mile area that is a mandatory evacuation for half a mile area, from what I understand. Beyond that, they're just telling folks to shelter in place. The EPA is saying that they are currently monitoring the air in the areas outside of that half a mile perimeter. Inside of that half a mile perimeter, they're not doing any testing at all so far, according to a representative of the EPA. We'll get to that statement from him shortly. But right now, they're not doing any air testing inside of that half a mile area, according to a member of the EPA, Jason Sewell is his name. Outside of the area, though, they're doing roving testing is what they're saying. And that for what the things that they're testing for, things are fine. So I'll be very curious how quickly after this fire goes out, they tell residents inside of that half a mile circle everything's okay, because you're not going to have dioxin testing right away. Dioxin testing needs to be, you need to be wiping surfaces or collecting soil, taking it to a lab, and then putting it through a series of testing. A lot of it is a little bit complicated. I've got a bit of a understanding of it, but I'm not going to go through it right now. It's not worth going through, but it's going to take some time to get samples back for things like dioxin. That was not done when East Palestine residents were told that it was safe to go back. They're just now starting to get some of those results. So I'll be very curious to see if any lessons have been learned in the last 2 months and telling these residents that it's safe to return home.
So a couple things, and I can't find what I was looking for, but basically what it was is an Ohio journalist, I think from a local Fox station, basically said, there's a massive fire on the border of Indiana and Ohio, but here's our meteorologist saying, not to worry, Ohio, the wind patterns show it's not coming here. Yeah, I wouldn't put my stock in your TV meteorologist to tell you the wind pattern shows it's not coming here. And by the way, this is Indiana and Ohio, the border for Western Ohio. So you're talking Dayton area, I think. So it was just completely irresponsible because this local TV news reporter who's probably making 40 grand a year doesn't know what she's talking about. And I'm pretty sure the meteorologist doesn't know what he's talking about, because the clip we're going to show you from the EPA clearly shows he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he does, but doesn't want to tell. And you kind of see him hesitate to actually answer specific questions because the actual answers are, this is a fucking catastrophe. Sorry. But number two, what I think is also pretty significant here, and let's go down the list before we play the EPA clip. I mean, I put this down. Let's start with where it says 3.5 miles away. That's the first tweet I want to show, Colin. Okay. Wild day here in Richmond, Indiana. The office I work in downtown is 1.5 miles from the fire. My house is 3.5 miles. The sky looked fully black in the area from about 4 to 5 today. Major black clouds still visible out of my back door at sundown. 2,000 people evacuated. So 3.5 miles away, he's seeing the full sky being black. I'm not a meteorologist. I do know when you have that level of plume, and as Aaron Brockovich told me, she said, dear Lord, there's hundreds of chemicals in that burning. I'm pretty sure it's not stopping at the half-mile mark. No. So they're saying it 3.5 miles away. They're seeing it. Now let's go on the live doc 10 miles away to that tweet.
And we've got almost 400 people watching right now. Definitely smash the like button. Help get this stream out to more folks. If you're not subscribed already, hit the subscribe button down below. Press the bell for notifications. 10 miles away.
And smash the like button like your life depends on it, because we're going to show you this shit from the EPA and the health department that shows you there's either really incompetent people at the head of this train that is the United Corporations of America, or just blatant liars who are giving you intentionally wrong information. But here we go. Definitely a smell when I came home. Nothing in particular, just the burning smell. Seen some stuff about people finding debris in their yard up to 10 miles away. I didn't this evening, but we'll give it another look. So this is the guy, I think he's a sports reporter actually, that he lives 3.5 miles away, and he's saying definitely a smell. What did they say in East Palestine? If you could smell it, that means there's contaminants.
Well, actually, at first they told you if you can smell it, oh, some of these have a low odor threshold, some of these have a low odor threshold. What they didn't say is, yes, one chemical had a low odor threshold, but the other 10 chemicals and more byproducts don't have a low odor threshold. And if you can smell it, it's already a level concern. But
Blast Beast, I live a block away and it was totally dark. The smell was bad, even with the mask. Email us, info@statuscoup.com. Maybe we could bring you on to get your eyewitness account. Info@statuscoup.com. Colin, be on the lookout if Blast Beast emails us, because maybe we could just bring him on kind of quick and dirty style. Thank you. And please be safe if you live that close to it. All right. So we've already gone 10 miles. Let's do the tweet 20 miles away. Poor Colin, we sent him 25 videos and tweets like an hour before this. It starts, I awoke to a heavy smell. I awoke to a heavy smell or burnt plastic from the fire in Richmond, Indiana. If you've ever smelled that smell, you know. The site of the fire is less than 20 miles from my house. I was in the city of Troy during the fire and didn't get back home until sunset, and the smoke plume could still be seen, as could the smoke cloud overhead. I don't know if you could click on those photos. So yeah, a little less than 20 miles away, he's smelling it. And I think Troy is Ohio. Is that correct?
I can double check for you.
Troy, Ohio. Yep. So 20 miles away in Ohio. So thank God the meteorologist said, don't worry about it. The wind path, I'm going to have to find that. So don't just take my word for it. A reporter put on Facebook, an Ohio reporter citing the meteorologist for their local outlet. No offense to, local news people, basically saying, if you're in Western Ohio, don't worry, which is absolutely reckless, absolutely batshit. You don't know enough to say, don't worry if you're in Western Ohio. It's right on the border. But this is somebody, if you could put up the post one more time, Colin, so we could just, yes, I live in Troy, Ohio. Somebody just said, if you could put up that Facebook post. So if you've ever, he's saying he smells it, burnt plastic in Troy, Ohio, which is less than 20 miles from my house. Side of the fire is less than 20 miles from his house in Troy. I don't know what less than 20 miles is. I'm assuming distance between Troy and Richmond. I'll just look it up here.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. The fire is less than 20 miles from his house. So it's like roughly.
But he's in Troy. So distance between Richmond, Indiana, and Troy, Ohio.
Interesting. It looks more like 40
almost
miles.
50
miles. Yeah.
All right. Whatever. We're thinking less than 20 miles. This guy is smelling it. So yeah, that's pretty concerning. And then let's move to 30 miles away. Video sent by Dr. Cricket is reporting seeing the smoke 30 miles away from where it's currently burning. If we could show that. Yeah, look at that sky. So, that's visual. Obviously, we don't have reports of them smelling it that far, but you could very clearly see it that far away, which is pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of those chemicals too, and like dioxin in particular, is going to be heavier in the air. It's getting lifted up with the thermal energy from the fire first, and then will slowly start to settle out underneath that cloud. So we'll see, and eventually, hopefully, the appropriate testing is done, what the effects are there. But seeing it that far away is not good.
Well, we could go further. 37 miles away. Let's show this. Last night, the smoke trail from Richmond, Indiana plastics warehouse fire was visible for miles. Here's a shot I took from my car window 37 miles south at about 5:30. So you see that plume there. And it looks like there's a lot of farmland in this area too. So this plume that's going overhead, You know, it remains to be seen how long the actual toxins are in the air before they dissipate. But obviously, if you're over farmland, if you're in the chat and you know this area, animals, crops, etc. So that's not good. That's definitely not good. Smash that like button. We got 420 people watching, so put that in your pipe, 420, and smoke it. Let's get more people. And I have seen this a lot. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, Lewis, but a lot of people think all of these things are not necessarily accidents, and they're just trying to take out all the low income, poor, heartland folks. Then once they kill them all, then they could just actually clean these areas and basically make it like a Wall Street in the Midwest. I don't know about all that, but this is happening at a rapid pace in the Midwest. I actually said to Aaron Brockovich, half kidding. If you're watching, Aaron, I'm only half kidding, but I'm really not. We should do a toxic tour, a Brockovich Status Coup toxic tour, because the Midwest in 10 years is going to be the biggest cancer alley. And she said, Jordan, it's been a cancer alley for 10 years already. So wait for that. I don't have any news, but I'm going to pitch hard to Erin Brockovich. She's been basically doing an undercover toxic tour for 30 years, but I'm going to pitch to her doing a Brockovich Status Coup toxic tour in a lot of the communities you don't know about, because it's not, to be clear, it's not just the Midwest, but I mean, in the last, I don't know, 3 months, all we're hearing about is derailments, plant explosions, fires, and a lot of them are particularly in the Midwest.
There'd be no shortage of content for that trip at all.
Yeah, and we would have to wear full hazmats because we'd be shortening our lives significantly. All right, let me give you a little bit more information before we show the EPA. Actually, let's show that Reddit. Let's show that Reddit. You put it in here. As of this morning, the huge smoke cloud has dissipated, no longer visible. Was that the one you had put in there?
The top one.
Oh no, I live directly behind this place.
Yep. It is on the top there. It is on the top there. I live directly behind this place. When the fire department told us to evacuate, I could feel the heat on my face. The smoke didn't look real. It looked CGI. Don't know if I still have a place to go back to or when that may be possible. The second comment, it sounds like the smoke has gone down a bit. It seemed like they're not in their home anymore. So the smoke has potentially gone down a bit, but there is definitely still some smoke as of this morning. We've seen some images of it, but this person was leaving their apartment, for the mandatory evacuation, could feel the heat from it, very likely in that neighborhood that we showed you from the Google Maps kind of overview of where this came from. So again, houses not super far away, apartments not super far away from where this happened, inside of that half-a-mile zone.
Absolutely. So let's play, we played the mayor, who basically said this plant had been cited, I think 4 times, and basically saying that we couldn't do anything about it. Obviously, we'll learn if that's true or not. I think they could have done something about it. But the EPA official was there. He spoke for about 5 minutes. And you're going to hear quite a few things that seem very eerily similar to East Palestine. But let's listen. We'll probably start and stop and react to some of the things he's saying.
Good morning. I'm Jason Sewell with U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Yesterday, the Indiana Department of Environmental Management called and asked for our assistance with monitoring air quality in the area. We arrived with contractors, and we've been collecting measurements in roving locations all over town, all overnight, and we have crews continuing to do so today. The contaminants we've been monitoring for include particulate matter in different sizes, as well as some specific toxic compounds. Fortunately, the toxic compounds that we're looking for, we're not seeing. But everyone needs to keep in mind that smoke is harmful, and we are seeing smoke in our particulate meters.
Yeah, question for you. I have 2 questions for you. 1, are people in Richmond safe? And 2, for people in Northwest Ohio, winds are coming from the Southwest. For people in Ohio, do they need to be concerned about it?
So we understand there's smoke is going to be going into Ohio. We're close enough to the border. People in Ohio are going to be seeing it. We did collect some measurements in Ohio last night, and again, what we were finding was particulate matter, which is smoke. As far as the safety concerns, we collect our information and we provide it to the health agencies. And so Christine is going to speak next on what these instruments and readings mean for people.
But Mr.
And just
Sewell,
to be clear,
Yeah.
just to be clear, when you said the toxic compounds you were looking for were not found, does that mean that you widened the scope, or at this point are you saying that there were no toxins found?
So there will definitely be toxins in smoke.
Yeah.
We're measuring at the ground level. Of course, heat rises, and the smoke plume is not at ground level for the most part, and dissipates as it goes downwind. But again, where we were not monitoring in the evacuation zone for the safety of my workers, but we were monitoring in the shelter-in-place areas and further areas, again, all the way up to New Paris, Ohio.
Mr.
kind
Mr.
of
Sewell, can you
toxins
tell
might
us
have you been looking for?
what chemicals are you looking for? When you talk about toxins, can
Sure.
you tell us what they are in basic language,
Yeah.
and what can those things
It doesn't
cause?
get basic, but
well, but you do your
but
best.
we're using an instrument that looks for volatile organic compounds. That's a class of compounds that can include things like styrene, and styrene can be put off in the burning of plastic. It can include benzene, which can be included in burning of plastic. We were also using a benzene-specific instrument and didn't see benzene.
Are these cancer-causing toxins?
Many of them are.
And give me the in the spectrum, at the best and the worst, what can these based on the chemicals you're talking about, what is their danger zone?
So, questions on what the readings mean for personal health is a health department purview, and we can ask those questions for Christine.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Can you explain, as far as obviously the bad breathe this in?
I don't know how to pause it. So, first of all, just common sense. How in all of these circumstances are a petri dish of highly toxic, cancer-causing carcinogens, volatile organic compounds exploding into this massive plume, but they're not detecting any of it in the air? I mean, you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to just the eye test. How is that possible? How are you not detecting concerning levels of it if you're seeing it right there? Secondly,
go ahead.
how could you even fully know at this point? Because it's not out. It's still on fire.
Yes. And they don't even they also don't even know what the hell was inside of the building. It seems like it seems like they don't have an exact manifest. I don't know of what the materials in the building, but it sounds to me a whole lot like at least one of the devices that they're using. When he mentioned VOCs, we're doing this broad VOC test. It sounds a heck of a lot like the same sort of kind of handheld PID, photoionization detector. It would make sense if they're using, it's the US EPA. They're in both places, hazardous materials, yada, 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 that they're using these handheld PID detectors that, there's a million problems with them that I've said to you. You cannot test for the wide range of chemicals that were involved in the train derailment, just like you're not going to be able to test for the wide range of chemicals, most of which they don't even know what the hell they're looking for in this case with the PID. So it's like, oh, well, the ones we're looking for, we're not finding. But okay, well, what about all the other ones? Like we're using a benzene specific device. Why are you using a benzene specific device? And what other devices can be used as well to look for more of this stuff? They need to be testing for everything, testing for certain things that you think may or may not be there, and then not testing for the 100 other things that very well could be there is going to do you no good. If this smoke is going everywhere,
Aaron Brockovich, dear Lord, there are hundreds of chemicals burning in that. And he's talking about, well, we have a specific thing for benzene, and we're also looking for styrene, I think it was, which is, good that you're looking for those things, but there's probably other chemicals of concern.
Right. Based on even just seeing the images from above of Google Maps and like the street view stuff of just like piles of random plastic around the building, like recycled plastic all bundled up and whatnot, I cannot imagine that the inside of that place is organized at all. There are probably all sorts of different types of plastics which require all sorts of different types of inputs to be able to make them. When those things catch on fire, the chemical byproducts of them the list is going to be enormous. The list is going to be enormous. And you're not going to be able to, with a freaking, and again, I'm speculating a little bit that they're using a PID device for a lot of this. It sounds like they're also using a specific device for benzene, but the tests that need to be done to get really specific on a lot of this stuff, to test for specific chemicals, they're going to need to collect samples and then take them into a lab and analyze them in the lab. They need to be, these houses in the half-a-mile radius really need to be, they need real air testing inside of the houses with multiple devices testing for different things, but they also need surfaces to be wiped and swabbed, those swabs and whatnot to be brought into a lab to do real accurate testing that you are not going to know for potentially a couple days that those homes and whatnot are safe. The fact that they're going in and doing tests for VOCs is killing me right now. Here, I hadn't heard that line yet. It sounds a heck of a lot like what they're using in East Palestine to do this testing to tell folks that everything is fine. I'd be curious. I mean, I'm going to follow up with the EPA and see if we can get specifics on which devices. I know the questions to ask now to do this, so stay tuned because we'll definitely reach out and try to get the specifics on what actually they're using for some of this testing.
Yeah, let's keep playing, Colin. If we have to restart it, that's fine. But I'll tell you where to stop and start.
We did collect some measurements in Ohio last night, and again, what we were finding was particulate matter, which is smoke. As far as the safety concerns, we collect our information and we provide it to the health agencies. And so Christine is going to speak next on what these instruments and readings mean for people.
But Mr.
Just
Sewell,
to be clear,
Yeah.
just to be clear, when you said the toxic compounds you were looking for were not found, does that mean that you widened the scope, or at this point are you saying that there were no toxins found?
So there will definitely be toxins in smoke.
Yeah.
We're measuring at the ground level. Of course, heat rises, and the smoke plume is not at ground level for the most part, and dissipates as it goes downwind. But again, where we were monitoring, we were not monitoring in the evacuation zone for the safety of my workers, but we were monitoring in the shelter-in-place areas and further areas, again, all the way up to New Paris, Ohio.
Mr. Sewell, can you tell us what chemicals are you looking for? We talk about toxins. Can you tell us what they are in basic language, and what can those things?
It doesn't get basic, but we're using it. We're using an instrument that looks for volatile organic compounds. That's a class of compounds that can include things like styrene, and styrene can be put off in the burning of plastic. It can include benzene, which can be included in burning of plastic. We were also using a benzene-specific instrument and didn't see benzene.
Are these cancer-causing toxins?
Many of them are.
Give me in the spectrum, at the best and the worst, what can these based on the chemicals you're talking about, what is their danger zone?
So, questions on what the readings mean for personal health is a health department purview, and we can ask these questions for Christine.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Can you explain, as far as obviously with bad to breathe this in, should people be wearing masks? Any precautions that they should take either now, tomorrow, or next week?
I'll leave that question just to Christine.
One question for you. I know you measured now. Obviously, this smoke is still billowing out.
Can you stop it for a second? Can you stop it for a second? Can I ask you a question? And I don't want to trigger anybody in the chat. I know some people are anti-mask for other reasons. Why is it that our health officials in East Palestine, from the EPA on down, and here, you see the fucking smoke behind them? Why are they standing there without masks? What kind of example do you think that sets to the rest of the town? Because they only care about optics. Aaron Brockovich said this to me once. They're not wearing masks because they want to give off the appearance that it's not as bad as you think, which is pretty stupid just for your own personal health if you're not wearing masks. Because just because it's not like flying in your immediate direction right there, it's right behind you. Wind patterns change constantly. Just because you're not in the middle of the inferno. The fact that the EPA official, you're about to see the state health official, the mayor, all of these people are not wearing N95 masks while they're speaking. I don't often credit CNN, but a CNN reporter was wearing an N95 mask. It's just crazy to me. I don't know about you, Lewis. I mean, I was giving you grief for not wearing your respirator the whole time in East Palestine, but this is not like a week after. This is as the fire is still going. They're standing there without any protection.
No, and I mean, I can tell you that if I was in East Palestine while the fire was still burning, I certainly would have had a respirator on for sure. And again, even in this last trip, I was wearing a respirator anytime I was near the creeks and near the streams where the stuff is still getting out into the air. But yes, I agree that a lot of this is optics. And I saw someone in here say in the comments say that, oh, it's probably because there's not a real problem. I can't find the comment. It's no, none of these people were wearing respirators in East Palestine either. They weren't wearing masks in East Palestine either. Are you telling me that you think that East Palestine hasn't been a problem? That there no one's sick there? That nothing's fine, you know, everything's fine and dandy there? Because it's pretty damn clear that that is not the case in East Palestine. So yeah, the fact that these guys are standing with the freaking fire in the background, I mean, just it
kind of reminds me actually. And I don't want to trigger anybody with COVID because obviously people think different things. But there was actually a report that during the whole Kevin McCarthy, 15 votes for him to become speaker, that there were people in Congress, nobody was wearing a mask because COVID is over. People in Congress, nobody was wearing a mask, and they were on the floor of the House for hours because this thing went 15 votes. And then outside the halls of Congress, reporters were reporting that these Congress people were hacking their lungs out, coughing, because several of them had COVID, but didn't want to wear a mask on the floor of Congress for whatever stupid reason. Mm-hmm. So anyway, sorry to interrupt, but it's just crazy to me that this is going on and no one's wearing a mask. We have politicized mask wearing to the point that even when you definitely should be wearing one, you're not. But what do they care? They have gold-plated health care as government officials. So if they get sick, they'll have health care. Let's keep going.
Something you're going to continue to do?
Yes, that's an excellent question. And I'd like to add, as the fire cools down, you're going to have more ground level smoke. And that'll be as important for us to be monitoring as the fire is extinguished as it is during kind of the peak of the fire. So we will stick around.
So are you testing every day, every 8 hours? Or
No, 24 hours a day. Right now we have people, like I said, roving around with handheld instruments, collecting snapshot readings at various locations that they will come back and repeat readings at the same locations. Depending on how long the fire goes out, we could actually set up some stationary meters that would measure in place real time until we pick them up.
Mr. Sewell, the things that are burning, are these things that will dissipate in the air, or are these the things that will leave a residue on vehicles, countertops, windows, doors, knobs?
I wouldn't speculate. We'll have to wait and see as the fire goes what we find.
So are those things you will test them for as you move forward, or?
I'm not testing like soot on cars, if that's what you're asking.
And what I'm asking is based on the compounds you're looking at. Are these the types of compounds that either burn in the air and then they dissipate because of the heat or the fire, or are these the types of compounds that will stick to the surfaces of vehicles, doors, and those kinds of things?
I'm not going to speculate.
Thank you.
So we don't have a list of all the things that were burning in that building yet? They should have had hazmat records. If it's a recycling plant, they need to have some sort of records of everything that they held in that building.
So,
Stop.
This is a recycling.
Do you see him looking down? Do you see him looking down when they ask about, do you have a list of all the contaminants? And he's kind of like looking around and then looking down, and it's like, oh shit, you got us. We don't actually know what we even should be testing for because we don't know what the hell was in that plant. I don't know if you could rewind like by 15 seconds to show that, but a body language expert looking at this, like this guy, yeah.
This is a recycling plant.
They should have had hazmat records. If it's a recycling plant, they need to have some sort of records of everything that they held in that building.
So, this is a recycling plant.
But even still,
That's my understanding. Maybe they have batteries in there. There's a system for recording what products you would have on hand, and that system goes to the state. It's called a Tier 2 system.
Right.
And that was discussed last night, and this particular facility, I believe, does not have records on the Tier 2 system. Yeah.
Okay.
So no records, no clue what's in there, so no clue what they're testing for, and they're seemingly not doing tests that very clearly should be done. He flat out said, no, we're not testing soot that's landing on cars and stuff. Like, why not? If you don't know what the hell was in the building, the way to find out what you need to be testing for is like, look, the soot definitely came from that. Swab the soot, send it into a lab. It doesn't, Am I crazy?
A wise man named Louis DeAngelis said in the situation of East Palestine, which we're still covering, why don't you just say we don't fucking know? We don't know, which means take precautions.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he says, I'm not going to speculate about whether you should be touching or cleaning surfaces in your home, that means we don't know.
Right. Use an abundance of caution. We are still looking into this. This situation is still developing. We don't know what was in the plant. The owner of the building clearly had some issues going on. Out of an abundance of caution, we recommend you steer clear of this. We recommend that if you're close, you should put a mask on. We don't know. We don't know is okay to say. It's better than lying to people like has been done before. I'm not saying that he's necessarily lying right now because he's careful to say we're not going to speculate. But in East Palestine, the EPA definitely lied. They've lied to people saying things are fine. Again, you don't need an air detector to know that things are not okay there and have not been okay there. In this case, it's still early. You've got time not to lie. So let's be honest to people. We don't know is an acceptable answer. Say we don't know. Take extra precautions and avoid, number one, putting all of these people at risk of God knows what, of carcinogens and all sorts of stuff that could affect them now, but also a decade down the line, but also save, try to have some credibility of your agency saying like, oh, well, we told you it was fine before and now we're learning that it's not. And then people lose all trust in you. Again, it's the same thing with all of these agencies that people wonder why trust in institutions are essentially at an all-time low. These folks wonder why the trust in all these institutions is at an all-time low when they just lie to people constantly, and then they expect them to take them at face value when something happens.
This is what happens when you have no oversight, no enforcement, failed regulations, failed infrastructure.
Yeah.
This is what happens. And I in my Flint reporting, I've spoken with people at the EPA who will not go on the record because they don't, it's the bureaucracy and they don't want to lose their job and benefits and pensions or whatever. But they are as boiling about the intentional sloppiness. And they make the point that we're underfunded at the EPA, which is a whole nother cabal because we're spending $850 on the military. Every breath I take, we're sending another $1 million to Ukraine, but you're underfunding the EPA at a time of the climate crisis, mass industrial explosions, derailments, wildfires, unprecedented storms. I don't really even want to argue with you if you're saying this is all bullshit. If you're a climate denialist, go away. You reap what you sow for what we're spending money. And by the way, the Pentagon is the biggest contributor to the climate change in the world. The Pentagon is. But, he's basically bullshitting because they don't know. And they don't want to say we don't know.
Right.
And this is the playbook. This is what Aaron Brockovich has told me. It's minimize, obfuscate. Instead of saying we don't have all the answers yet. Frankly, it's insane to me that the evacuation zone is only a half mile. We're going to get to the health official who contradicts herself about how far should the evacuation zone be. But this EPA official was just towing the company line. And they also said that they're doing snapshot readings for air testing. I don't know. You know more about it than I from East Palestine, but I don't really think snapshot readings are going to be effective in this case with a still moving fire.
Right. I mean, they at this stage of this, like, okay, I think what they're saying when they're doing that is like they're going and they're kind of moving around because they don't have permanent resources in a spot that is like doing the ongoing testing. But you're the EPA. But just drop. It doesn't take that long to set these things up. I've saw them all over East Palestine. I saw them being moved where you've got an air testing device that can be hanging on a street sign and you put it there and then you get a continuous 24-hour reading. They've got to have more of them. Just it's they're probably spending more time driving around in circles going to all these places where they could be installing these devices that will give a 24-hour reading. So I agree that is a step that definitely should be taken. And I'll say right now too that we have 500 people watching right now. Smash the like button to help get this out to more folks. we're going to continue staying on this story. We've been covering East Palestine on and off, not on and off, basically continuously since February 3rd when that happened. Yeah, like the video to help get this out to more folks.
Let's keep going with the EPA official.
Yeah.
That was all of the video for him.
Okay, so let's now go. I believe this was I don't know if it was a federal or a state environmental official. So I can't. It was excuse me. I don't know if it was a federal or a state health official. But well, regardless, she contradicts herself, and I think gives absolutely insane answers. Go ahead.
Sure. The health department's main concern at this point is the particulate matter, as Jason had talked about. These are very fine particles, and if they're breathed in, can cause all kinds of respiratory problems, burning of the eyes, tightening of the chest. It could aggravate asthma, it could cause bronchitis, and all kinds of things. So we are stressing to the public to honor the evacuation zone. It's for your safety that the evacuation zone is there. And if you can see the smoke, you're in the smoke, get out of the smoke. If there's a reason that you need to go back to your home to get medication, you need to work with our officials on that site so we can safely escort you in and out of this evacuation zone. But any smoke, whether it has, benzene or any of the other compounds that Jason spoke about, is dangerous because of the particulate matter that's in that. And breathing that in and of itself, just the particulate matter is dangerous for all people, but in particular, people with chronic illnesses, COPD, and the elderly. So we are concerned about that.
So, ma'am, at this point, is that neighborhood closed, ma'am, then? Is that neighborhood, if I live in this neighborhood right where the fire is and smoke, is that shut down?
We still are maintaining a half-mile radius surrounding the fire and having the evacuation of that.
Should folks be wearing an N95? I know we've dealt with this with COVID, right? But what is the best way to manage? People still have to go to work, have to do, right? Life goes on in Richmond. What is the best way to handle this?
Absolutely. Masks do filter out particulate matter. When we get into really fine particulate matter, N95s are the type of masks that would be the most protective. But again, I want to reiterate, we want people to stay out of the evacuation zone. Wearing an N95 mask will provide a certain amount of protection, but the best protection you're going to get is to stay out of the smoke.
I understand the evacuation area is a half mile, but if I'm a mile and a half, am I any safer? Am I much safer? Should I do anything different?
If you're seeing, smelling, eyes burning, experiencing any kind of difficulty in breathing, you need to evacuate that area, get out of that area.
So if you didn't hear the last question, she's still talking about the half-mile evacuation zone. So a reporter asks, well, if I'm a mile and a half away and I'm, if I'm a mile and a half away and I can see it and smell it, what should I do? And she's saying, if you can smell it, if you're smelling it, if it's burning your eyes or causing issues, you should leave. So you're saying that a mile and a half away, you could still be inhaling it, burning your eyes, then you should leave. Then why is your evacuation zone only, like the answer to that, if your evacuation zone is only a half mile, should be, we don't believe you would have those effects beyond a half mile. That's why our evacuation zone is a half mile.
Yeah.
Why would people be having those symptoms a mile and a half away? And we just read people who were smelling it 10 miles away.
Right.
It's just totally haphazard. A half mile away. Look at the Plume. That's not restricted to a half mile, but she just contradicted herself.
Right. And I mean, you've got that kind of artificial half mile boundary. Again, this is not to continue to keep tying it to East Palestine, but similar story in East Palestine. It was at first, kind of a mile. It might have even been a little bit smaller at first, but with residents there I talked to, as the burn was happening, they were literally like moving the line a little bit of like, actually, we're now going to move it a little bit further now, just because of how big it was. So very arbitrary half a mile line here. There's not a magic bubble. over this area as much as they want there to be a magic bubble. There isn't. So it sounds like the guidance should be, yes, if you're in a half a mile, you have to leave. And if you smell this, you should also leave. But that message of if you're smelling this at all, you have to leave. I'm only hearing that in this press conference. Is that going out in a mass text message to everybody in the area? Because those resources exist. I saw on Twitter people getting text messages. If you live a half a mile from this, you need to evacuate. I notably did not see in any of those screenshots on Twitter, and I'm sorry we don't have any of them right here. I did not see, if you smell smoke, you should also leave. And it sounds like that's the information that's being given there. And I just wanted to say, too, because I know you said you were unsure what her role was. Her name is Christine Stinson, and she's the Wayne County Health Department official here. So that is the county level health department where this incident took place.
I mean, first of all, and I'm not going to bullshit that I'm an expert on this, but there's not like one type of plastics in this plastic recycling. There's a lot of different types of plastics, all which have their a different fingerprint as far as if they burn and go into the air. So it's just beyond. They're only really talking about benzene, styrene, but you don't hear dioxins, which that was one of the first things the chemist I spoke to mentioned. What was the other one?
Furans,
the microplastics. It just seems to me like there's an unwritten manual of how to minimize these things. And they're basically making it seem that as soon as the fire is out, the risk is gone, which is kind of what they made it seem like in East Palestine. And if you're watching from East Palestine, you're still living this. Nobody has answered what is causing all of these health symptoms in East Palestine. Dizziness, burning eyes, rashes, which are actually chemical burns. We just showed you yesterday residents on city water, which they have claimed is safe. A woman's back, complete rashes, the side of her breast, fingers, hands. That comes after we showed you another woman on city water in East Palestine. Weeks after they're claiming it's fine. Her face rashes, her legs, her feet. And
that's in addition to and that's in addition to all of the other symptoms that folks are still having there, I'll say.
And I'm not trying to dramatically hype fear. Obviously fear sells. That's why the media only covers these things for a week. If you're lucky, they'll cover it for a week when the fire is still there. After that, they want nothing to do with it. That's what makes us different, because we stay on these stories. Lewis, we're hopefully going to be able to send him to East Palestine again by the end of this month. I'm trying to go back to Flint. It's the 9-year anniversary. Flint still does not have clean water 9 years later. We're covering a Kalamazoo, Michigan, toxic pollution in the air coming from a paper mill, a toxic gas that's been pumped into the air for over a decade, which the governor of Michigan is allowing. There's so much going on and so much contamination, but I'm just getting from all of them, they don't know, but they're trying to give off an aura of authority and expertise, and we're doing all the testing, when in reality, one hand doesn't know what the other one's doing. They probably are scrambling to find out all the contaminants that were in that plant. Because just because it's a plastic plant doesn't mean plastic was the only thing in that plant.
Right.
And they're not being honest that we don't know. And I don't really know what rule book or what handbook is saying the evacuation zone should only be a half mile. It was ridiculous that the evacuation zone at East Palestine was only a mile.
And frankly, there probably isn't a rule book. It's probably a very, very, very arbitrary guess. I mean, I could be wrong in this. We're speculating a little bit, but in East Palestine, the 1 mile buffer, I mean, that decision was supposedly made based on the information for a 1-car vent and burn and the potential for an explosion of that 1 car. The decision was then made to raise that level to 5 cars, and the evacuation zone stayed the same. How did that math does not add up? If you go from burning 1 to 5, you 5x the amount of cars that you're going to burn. You would think that the evacuation zone maybe doesn't 5x, but it should have done some sort of difference in the change. And that was when they actually had a couple days to do the modeling. This just happened. You know what I mean? This happened much quicker. And this arbitrary half a mile number comes up. One other thing that I'll point out that was brought up, I believe it was in the health department person speaking, but it may have been the EPA gentleman as well. They said as the fire extinguishes, more ground level smoke will occur, because obviously when the fires first happened, a lot of the smoke goes straight up in the air with all of the thermal energy kind of causing it to go up. As the fire extinguishes, it kind of turns in, like even with like a campfire, your smoke kind of like settles down closer to the ground level. That is also probably going to be a time with a lot of dangerous stuff going even more directly into the neighborhoods at the street level where people are standing and walking. I'll be curious again how quickly folks are told that it's okay to go back into this half a mile radius, especially given that information, because really until the fire is fully extinguished and the smoke is fully done, that is when they should really be going into doing the tests in these homes, in these residential areas, to tell people. And if they're going to do the appropriate tests, they then need to take those, you know, the tests that they've done, take the swabs of surfaces and whatnot that they've done, bring them to a lab, do the appropriate testing that needs to be done in a lab before telling people that it's okay to go back. But you can't do that until there is no more essentially ground smoke blowing into these neighborhoods.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're going to continue monitoring it, but honestly, I don't really know how much stock you can put in what the EPA and the state health officials are saying. I don't want to tell you to totally disregard what they're saying, but the truth is, sadly, the reality of what's going on here and in a lot of these other places is going to come from the symptoms residents are experiencing and independent testing that somehow, in all of these cases, in Flint, in East Palestine, probably here, independent testers with far less resources than the federal EPA or the state EPA are finding higher contaminant levels. And remember, in the case of East Palestine, and we keep bringing it up because it's still ongoing, the EPA played dumb in the beginning. Well, we don't really need to test for dioxins, which are some of the most toxic chemicals known to man, because they're just baseline in the air anyway. So we wouldn't really be able to see if there's a huge spike in dioxins in East Palestine because we don't know the baseline level there in the first place. Okay, well, if you test for it, you would know if there's an elevated level now. Who cares what the level was previously? And it took independent testers, residents who were informed by independent experts to demand that the EPA test for dioxins. And then the EPA said, okay, we'll test for dioxins, but wait, it'll be the railroad company testing for dioxins, not the EPA. So the EPA was having the company who poisoned the town test for the dioxins. We still haven't seen Norfolk Southern's data, which I don't trust anyway. So we've only had independent testing from Indiana, ironically. Indiana tested for dioxins, 2 samples that were in East Palestine, and found, 700 parts per billion or something like that?
I forget the specific number, but the notable thing was that it was significantly higher than the amount that the EPA themselves said in 2010 causes a significant risk of cancer. So,
and by the way,
numbers, but
by the way, it gets worse because we reported on this last week. There was a whole hubbubaloo in East Palestine because they were going to have an Easter egg hunt in a park that is right near the contaminated creeks that are heavily contaminated. People have gotten sick by that creek. People smell it. They've had aeration machines that Lewis has reported from in East Palestine, pumping the toxic soil out of the water and into the air. But before the Easter egg hunt, the mayor signed off on, you could have the Easter egg hunt in the park. And we're signing off on it because the railroad company has, sanitized the basketball court and tennis courts where they were having the Easter egg hunt. I don't know what that means. I don't know what they sanitized it with. Was it with, what are they spraying Febreze? But we learned it was framed by the city that the EPA did testing, and the EPA's testing showed the soil in that park was safe. I read the actual test results. In the first fucking paragraph, the EPA basically said, this is not the EPA's official positions or policies, basically saying the EPA did not stand by the results, which were not even tested by the EPA. It was a contractor who tested this park.
Right.
So the EPA didn't stand by it. And the actual testing said the equipment we're using for a significant amount of the data that we found should not be considered precise or completely accurate. So the media just regurgitates and doesn't actually look under the hood at any of this. But that was dangerous to have kids doing Easter egg hunting in this park, because we don't actually know what the real data is, because the EPA wouldn't stand by it, and the equipment, apparently by the contractor who put out the test results, said if you see the letter J next to the soil data that we tested, it means it's not completely precise or accurate. And if you look at the data, it had the letter J all over the place. Why I tell you this? They're making it up as they go along, and they are relying on the media to either not report it, because CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, Washington Post, all of them, they moved on from East Palestine after a week, just like moved on from Flint.
And I'll add too that we're not the only ones kind of coming out and saying that this is ridiculous. Last night on the live stream, if you caught that, I played a couple of clips with Dr. Andrew Welton, who is an independent tester who is doing work in East Palestine. And this relates directly to, I would say, here to Indiana, where Welton calls out the fact in this interview, as well as in a series of tweets, that the EPA, the command structure with everything that went on in East Palestine was all over the map. People were getting results in all sorts of different formats, with different measurements, with different levels of concern, using different organizations. The amount of contractors involved made the whole situation even worse on top of all of that. And that is, at this point, 10 weeks after the disaster in East Palestine, 10 weeks later, it is still an absolute shit show and an absolute mess with the whole structure of how all of the testing has been done and how all of the results have been presented in so many absolutely confusing ways that residents are looking at it and they're having a hard time understanding it, and experts even are looking at it and they're needing to do conversions, trying to get this result to match this result because they did it in different formats, and it's an absolute disaster. Here they've got a chance to start from scratch and to get this all organized, but it seems like they're just kind of willy-nilly randomly testing some things, but not testing others. They don't know exactly what's in the manifest of what was in the building. Manifest is probably the wrong word, but they don't know what's exactly in the building. They need to be doing blanket tests for all sorts of things until they can figure out what was in that building. So again, not just us here saying that the structure of how all this testing has been done, the decisions being made have been all over the place, confusing, haphazard, insufficient, inadequate, to use a word that Andrew Welton himself used. So not only us, but experts who study this sort of thing, who come in and test for these sorts of things, are also sounding the alarm. So this isn't just us saying this. Again, we've said a whole bunch of times, we're not experts in this. We have gotten pretty good at a lot of this stuff, I'll say, because unfortunately we've had to learn a lot about it. But actual experts on the subject are calling out these decisions as well. Andrew Welton, we've talked to Aaron Bragg a couple of times on the show, called out a lot of the things in interviews that I've done with him. Others as well, on and off the record, calling this sort of stuff out for what it is, which is an absolute mess. The EPA has not done, they've shown that they cannot do a good job of organizing this information, presenting it in a way that is understandable by the general public, because that's what their job should be. They're there to make sure that you and I and the people in these towns where these are being affected right now are going to be fine and safe and being provided with good information. But they are not being provided with good information. They're being provided with, frankly, in a lot of cases, bullshit and lies and nothing in some cases. I mean, right now that we saw the gentleman look down at his, he's like, oh, we don't know what was in the building. We don't know what was in the building. Then how do you know that it's safe? You don't know that it's safe. You don't know that outside.
Louis, I want to also bring up, and keep smashing that like button. We got 500 people watching. Keep pressing that like button. Colin, I just sent it to you. If you could put it back up. Louis covered this yesterday. He did the live stream solo. Why East Palestine? Why we keep bringing this up? Because it's very connected. I'm very careful. I don't have a blanket policy, do not trust anything the government ever tells you, because I think that's too broad a brush. They don't always lie to you. Sometimes they get it right. For example, the government kept saying Russia's going to invade Ukraine. People said, well, they said Iraq. They said weapons of mass destruction. They said this, so I don't trust anything they say. Sometimes the government gets it right. So I'm not telling you never trust anything the government ever says. However, the government, the EPA, the governor of Ohio, who to this day, I think today's 68 days since the East Palestine train derailment, has still not declared a state of emergency. Pretty much a week or two into this in East Palestine, they said, no, the city water is fine. Totally unrelated to the well water. The city water is fine. Colin, let's show it. Sorry if you saw this yesterday, but we got to show it again. This is residents in East Palestine on city water. If you could show the picture. Look at that woman's back. That's a full back rash from the city water in East Palestine. If you go down, and we did get permission, we're not just showing you boob photos, but this is, side boob. She's got rash on her boob. If you go down, she's got a rash on her back. She's got a rash on her boob. This is her husband. Little bumps and rashes on his fingers, on his hand. If you keep going down, this is the other woman that we showed you a couple weeks ago. That's her before. That's her after taking a shower on city water. Not like 2 months ago. We're talking 3 weeks ago. Full face rash. That's from the city water that they're saying is safe. So that's why I say you got to trust the residents who are sending you the pictures, who are telling you how they feel. You got to trust the reporters who are actually going. Lewis was there, 2.5 weeks ago?
Yep.
Remind people of your symptoms, even though they're saying it's all gravy.
Right. I mean, after spending time outside in a resident's backyard, who she's been told her home and area is safe, with Sulphur Run running right in her backyard, sore throat, neck tightening up, really bad headache that lasted for a couple hours. Among other things, my eyes were burning inside of her home. So I've experienced all of those symptoms. And again, it's the residents. It's journalists like me. It's other journalists who've also talked about getting sick there. And then on top of that now, you also have the CDC, who were going door to door to report on, or to go check in on and study resident health symptoms. Members of the CDC got sick. And actually, they finally, weeks later, came out and put it out in the public. CNN, actually, props to them for covering it, did a story on it, saying that members of the CDC got sick. In addition to that, I mentioned Andrew Welton earlier. Andrew Welton, in an interview that I talked about last night, described himself getting sick as a result of this. And these are all instances where people were not feeling ill or sick before. I described myself, I wasn't dehydrated or anything like that. I wasn't feeling sick in any other way. I wasn't nervous about being there. This was near the end of my second trip. So it's not like I was nervous about potentially having something happen while I was there. And I was noticing these symptoms. Dr. Welton talked similarly about this. Members of the CDC talk similarly about this, at least in the report that we were able to get when CNN put that out. So it's the residents, and their issues are being validated a little bit more when you've got the CDC coming out and saying it. And it shouldn't need to be that. People should be listening to them at face value because they're not lying. I can tell you, again, I've been there, and it's I think I'd be able to tell if every single person that I was talking to was lying to me. Okay. So it's not like it's one or two people and we're cherry picking them out. That is not the case. This is an ongoing thing there. Residents have still gotten sick. I experienced some of the symptoms myself. Folks like Dr. Welton experienced some of the symptoms himself, as well as the CDC experiencing the symptoms and admitting it.
Absolutely. Let me see one more thing. And by the way, if you're new to Status Coup, we got 500 people watching. Please subscribe to this channel. Also, we don't just talk from our studio here. We get out there. Lewis has already been to East Palestine twice. I've been to Flint. I'm about to make my 19th reporting trip to Flint in 6 years. I'm also working on a book on Flint, hopefully a documentary soon. So please, if you can, We're not funded by Norfolk Southern. We're not funded by the banks, the fossil fuel companies, real estate, Silicon Valley, big pharma. Our funding comes directly from you. Please sign up, statuscoup.com/join. You can become a member for as low as $5 a month. Your membership is how we fund all this. You might think it's nothing. If you keep stacking up, $5, $5, $5, members. We've fortunately grown over the last 2 months covering East Palestine. We don't have to, we could keep going back and stay on these stories. That's why other outlets abandon these stories right away, because they don't think it's financially profitable for them. They don't think the viewers care enough for them to stay on those stories. We know that's not the truth. We know there's a huge demand for actual reporting in these communities to expose the lies from the EPA, the health officials, to expose the lies from the politicians who are telling you everything is okay. But you have to stay on the stories to keep exposing them. You have to keep in contact with residents. Lewis and I have been in contact with residents from East Palestine every day for 2 months. I've been in contact with residents from Flint for 7 years. You have to keep investigating, and that takes money. So please sign up, statuscoup.com/join. Before we move on to East Palestine, I want to make one thing very clear. Unfortunately, the media is going to stay on Indiana, if you're lucky, maybe for another couple days. If you're lucky, maybe for a couple more days. And you might say, devil's advocate, well, Jordan, there's war in Europe and, we got to cover other things. These are multi-billion-dollar corporate media outlets. They have way more resources than us. They could walk and chew gum at the same time. They could pontificate about the 2024 election and do the Trump perp walk watch 24/7 while covering environmental disasters. Mm-hmm. Why the people in Flint and East Palestine and East Chicago, which I've covered, and North Carolina, where I've covered the PFAS contamination, and Pittsburgh and many other places I've covered, why they're screwed is because normally when your boat crashes, you don't expect the rescue choppers to kind of come close and then turn back. That's basically the equivalent of what goes on in these environmental catastrophes. You feel like, right away, if you're a resident, you feel like you're going to get help because all the media is there, and for a hot minute they all care, and then they're gone. That's what's happening in East Palestine right now. That's what's happened in Flint. Yes, they are killing us slowly. And we are not like that. We can only cover so much. It's only me, Lewis. We have some kind of freelance people reporting, commentating. We don't have full resources that I would like. If you are a wealthy person watching and you're not corrupt and you want to give us more resources, feel free to reach out. info@statuscoup.com. I'd love to take your money with no strings attached. But the last thing I'll say on this is the fire's still going. As far as we know, it's going to go for days. The chemist I've been talking to also made a point that I want to bring up. For this fire or any of these major fires, people also have to consider what fire retardant they are using. That stuff also has PFAS in it. Hopefully they stop using that. So the firefighting foam and stuff like that, you've seen that at military bases where firefighting foam causes contamination and PFAS, which are those forever chemicals. So that's a good point. Lewis, any other thoughts on Indiana before we move on to some concerning things in East Palestine?
No, I'm just my top concern and what I think folks should really be looking for is when our residents, specifically in this half a mile zone who were evacuated, I'm very curious to find out when the evacuation orders there are lifted, as well as what the language is that tells them that it's okay to go back. Because until there are actual residential home tests, I've seen the mistakes made on residential home testing in East Palestine. I've reported on it extensively. We've got a great piece on Substack that went into that as well. If you're not on our Substack already, substack.statuscoup.com. You can check that out there. You also get notifications when we post links there. So that's a good spot to check that out. But I've seen the mistakes made in East Palestine as far as telling people it's okay to go home. This neighborhood in particular that is right next to this is definitely like the top concern for me. I think the smoke going elsewhere is also a major concern, but there's no doubt in my mind that these houses really close by are going to be affected by this, really do need there to be some sort of in-home testing being done before these folks are told that it's okay to return. So I think that's something that I'll definitely be looking into here moving forward.
And by the way, again, not a chemist, not a meteorologist. I think it's reckless. If you live in Dayton, Ohio, or any further west than Dayton, Ohio, and Richmond, Indiana, it's 46 miles, 50 minutes.
And I'll say too, in case we have anybody watching in that area, if you are there and you want to get in touch, please email us info@statuscoup.com. Especially if they do start to do some of these residential home tests, it'd be great to be able to fill you in. I can even connect you with some experts on the right questions to ask these folks when they're in your home, because some of the stuff that I've seen from videos of this happening in residents' homes in East Palestine and answers that are being provided were wholly inadequate. And if you can go in with the right questions at hand, ready to go, I think it would help do a service. So if you're interested, I'd love to chat with some folks who are in that area. info@statuscoup.com. Send us an email, and we'll make sure that we follow up with you there.
And by the way, where is, like, if you live in Dayton, Ohio, or Western Ohio, shouldn't your government officials be giving you information? Hey, there's a massive inferno about 50 miles west. Pay attention. Be on the lookout for alerts. The EPA casually said, yeah, we did some testing in Ohio overnight. Okay. It's just one hand doesn't know what the other's doing. I can't guarantee it, but I did reach out to Erin Brockovich. We might have an interview with her tomorrow on this and the latest with East Palestine. So stay tuned for that. A couple updates on East Palestine. I know you haven't seen this yet, Lewis, but I just wanted to kind of give a couple updates. Colin, if you could show in the East Palestine section. So apparently now you could show this Facebook post. That's the first thing. Be very careful about posting that you haven't been home. The village of East Palestine is now charging people $200 that they have identified as, quote, vacating their property. This letter in reference to a property in the 1 mile zone also. East Palestine, profit over people. I don't know if you could click on that letter. Greetings. The village of East Palestine has an ordinance requiring registration of vacant residential and commercial buildings within the village limits. By record, you own a duplex with the address. This structure has been identified as being vacant, which therefore requires it to be registered. A fee of $200 per unit is payable to the village of East Palestine due immediately. Additionally, there are currently trash and junk violations occurring. So this is not one person. I heard this from several people, that people who have basically left because their homes are unsafe have gotten letters basically saying that your property is vacant, the trash is piling up, whatever. I mean, this is as dystopian as what Lewis reported last week, that people in East Palestine were told, oh no, the W-9 form that you're filling out at the Norfolk Southern Reimbursement Center, it's not for you to pay taxes on. It's just for our records, only for them to find out later, oh no, you're going to have to pay taxes on the reimbursement money for the hotel or other derailment related money that they're getting reimbursed for. Obviously, they shouldn't be taxed on money. They didn't ask to be relocated to hotels, this and that. They have to be because their homes smell like petrochemical toxic shit still. But people are going to be fined. I mean, if it's an unrelated thing and a home has just been abandoned for longer than the East Palestine derailment, that's for the city to decide. Right. But my understanding is they're sending these notices out to people who have been gone as a result of the East Palestine derailment, which is crazy.
It is crazy, and that's weird to me. I mean, like, okay, if they're not there, the trash isn't going to be piling up. I can't imagine what that might be. Are they like spying on these people? Like, how do you know? How are they pointing out that these are vacant homes? That's bizarre to me. And not to mention, people are still relocated right now because they're still digging up tracks in town. It looks like to me one side of the tracks, they've almost finished removal of the soil on one side of the track. So they're almost halfway done with the soil removal from underneath the tracks, the contaminated soil removal that Norfolk Southern buried all of these chemicals underneath the tracks to get the railroad back open again quickly. So they still have another at least month, maybe 2 months of work to do on the other side of the tracks, where they're going to dig up essentially a half a mile scar right through the middle of town again. that is going to continue to affect the air quality, continue to affect potentially the water quality in the area. That's ridiculous to me. That was the first I'd heard of that.
So we'll try to look further into that. I mean, honestly, doing my best. I'm on deadline for a book and other things too, so we can't cover it all. Sorry to people who have reached out. You know, we have residents reaching out to us because we're really one of the only ones covering it, and we'd love to cover every aspect, but you know, Lewis has a life and I got a newborn and other things. Welcome, new Status Coup member. Hubs just signed up. Welcome, Hubs. Thanks for signing up as a new Status Coup member. By the way, we still haven't done our monthly members call. Last month was great. We had more people than we've had in a while. So if you sign up as a Status Coup member, you get access to our monthly Zoom call as well. So that's a lot of fun. We'll probably do it next week or the week after. We usually go for an hour or two on Zoom. So keep signing up if you can. The other thing I wanted to touch on here, this is just crazy. This is just crazy. If you have this Facebook link with the video, Colin, the next thing on the live doc.
Questions such as where they were in relation to the derailment. And if you're talking about a headache, then you certainly would also want to look into other things such as mental health, because that can affect things like headaches. So there's really not a good answer to that question because it's very individualized based on the patient and what they present with.
So that is a new, I think, permanent health clinic they're opening up in East Palestine. If you are familiar with the first health clinic, Lewis, you were there, so you could just refresh people's mind what that health clinic was.
So the first health clinic, I went there and actually went to go see for myself what it was. That first health clinic was providing essentially somebody to talk to, providing some guidance for you. They'll provide you a referral to a doctor. But what was most important about that first health clinic was what it was not providing. That first health clinic was not providing any sort of diagnosis. It was not providing any sort of urine or blood testing. It was not providing any sort of prescriptions. Frankly, if we weren't there, most of the media who was covering that health clinic essentially just read the press release that was given to them from the state officials, the local officials that said, "Oh, we're opening this great new health clinic in town." Because I was getting some crazy looks for reporting fairly negatively from in front of that health clinic. But yes, that health clinic was not providing any real assistance. So it sounds like this is a permanent clinic that they're now opening in East Palestine. What was the question, I guess, that was being asked there? Yeah.
Well, it's just interesting because they've already had, I think, gaslighting pamphlets sent out claiming your rashes are probably from stress. But here, I don't know who that woman was again. Colin, play it one more time.
Questions such as where they were in relation to the derailment. And if you're talking about a headache, then you certainly would also want to look into other things such as mental health, because that can affect things like headaches. So there's really not a good answer to that question because it's very individualized based on the patient and what they present with.
So yeah, if you have a headache, it's probably your mental health, depression, anxiety. Just like if you have a rash, it's probably a stress rash. Literally, the petri dish of chemicals that have been found in East Palestine, mostly by independent testers, you can get headaches from them. You can get rashes from them. Sure, people are stressed, they're traumatized, but you keep hearing from health officials that your skin rashes, now your headaches, they're from mental health.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense.
The whole town, all at the same time, all started developing all of these things collectively because they all started having mental health problems all together. Oh, it just was a coincidence, though, that a massive train filled with toxic chemicals derailed in their backyard, and then the decision was made to set it all on fire. And then these folks had to breathe in the aftermath of that and had their creeks contaminated that run through the middle of town. That was the coincidence. Really, the entire town just all was on the verge of having a major mental health crisis, causing them to get rashes and headaches. If you think otherwise, you're a crazy person.
I mean, don't get it twisted. There are people I'm speaking with in East Palestine that are having mental health issues.
Definitely.
I would be too.
Yeah.
So it's not to say you can't have physical illness and correlated mental health, anybody
Right.
will tell you that there's a very thin line between physical problems and mental health. But when they say, oh, it's a highly individualized thing, no, it's not. Everybody was exposed to the same fucking contaminants in this town. So if these contaminants generally on the population cause dizziness, yes, headaches, yes, burning eyes, yes, then it's not an individualized situation. It's these are what these chemicals are known to cause in human health.
And I can say too, I can only speak for myself, but I think I can assume a little bit here. I experienced headaches myself and some of these other symptoms, and I can tell you that I was not on the, having a mental health issue at the same time. I would imagine that many of the CDC members who got sick probably were not having any. It would have been reported if it was, because I'm sure that they would look for some sort of out to do it. Dr. Welton, in his interview that we played last night that he did with News Nation, said that he was hydrated, he wasn't having any other issues, and he also experienced those symptoms. So that's an absolutely ridiculous claim coming from whoever that doctor was speaking at the new opening of the clinic.
It's just crazy. God, we're going to have to really save some of this to just make a video of the insane things they say, not just on East Palestine, but now in Indiana too.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to touch on here, Colin, if you have this image from a Facebook group. So remember, Norfolk Southern, Alan Shaw, under oath, said, we're going to do the right thing for as long as it takes. As long as it takes. When Bernie asked him, does that mean you're going to give people health care? We're going to do the right thing. Does that mean you're going to give people health care? We'll do the right thing. Well, let's see how the reimbursement center is going now, 68 days later. At the assistance center, been here for almost 3 hours, just got reimbursed for an air purifier. Why? Because they only have 3 people working. So a little over 2 months ago, the assistance center, which is where you go for reimbursements, where Lewis, in the early days, you reported there were lines starting at 6 a.m. Of residents. You had to take a ticket. And a lot of people waited for hours only to be told, you got to come back tomorrow. Now they have 3 people waiting with residents who have been poisoned.
Working. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now they have 3 people working. So you got to wait for 3 hours to get reimbursed for an air purifier.
And again, what's ridiculous is the removal of the tracks in town is only half done. It's not like people are not still relocating. Even Norfolk Southern was like, they were the ones who initially put out like, oh, we're going to be tearing up the tracks if you live within this radius of the village, and the radius was all over the place. It's a whole other story. But like they were the ones initially who were like, oh, yep, relocation, that will still be a thing for people who want to leave. So like they should still be expecting people to come to the relocation center, to the reimbursement center. The fact that they've bumped it down to 3 people is outrageous. Again, I think it's outrageous that these folks still, again, nearly 10 weeks later, are needing to go to the railroad themselves to get the money. The fact that there's not some sort of intermediary or some sort of website or something like that it baffles me that a multi-billion-dollar company couldn't have a better way to do it if you had to deal directly with them. But I think that our federal government very well should be in here, being an intermediary, making sure the residents are getting what they need, not needing to beg for it. And then the federal government makes sure that they get the money from Norfolk Southern on the back end.
And I want to draw a connection here. For those of you who didn't see it, yesterday I was live from Rutgers University in New Jersey. Not as big of an audience, but definitely, if you can, go check out that live stream. And I was live because 9,000 workers are on strike at Rutgers, which is the largest university in New Jersey. And like a lot of other universities, you have a lot of fat at the top. The president of the university is making $1 million. You have all these middle manager executives making a shit ton of money. All the money is going to the football and basketball teams. And you have professors who literally are on food stamps. You have professors that are living in their car. You have people in New Jersey. $15 an hour in New Jersey might as well be poverty. Same thing with New York, because cost, housing, everything's so high. And somebody said something to me I didn't know. Literally, while professors and adjuncts are getting paid like $20,000 to $30,000, you literally have the football team they spent $450,000 on Uber Eats last year. The players on the football team, $450,000 for Uber Eats for the football team players. I like watching football. I like fantasy football. I would not spend $400 in the budget for football players to get Uber Eats when that money should be going to teachers and professors and researchers. Correlate that to this. How is it? And again, I went on a rant last week. I'm not going to do it again. It doesn't matter if you support how much money or support Ukraine or think we should not be involved with Ukraine, or you support America giving money to other countries, or you don't. I'm not making a foreign policy diatribe or monologue here. But whether you support us spending all this money elsewhere or us giving billions to Ukraine or not, how is it so simple that the president comes out and there's announcements on every week that we're sending billions directly to another country? But here you have all of this bureaucracy. Louis, you haven't even reported yet. You're working on a story about Medicaid and how people in East Palestine, it's possible that the reimbursement money they're getting from Norfolk Southern might, since it's apparently being counted as taxable income, might actually raise their income too much where they're no longer eligible for Medicaid or SNAP. How is it that you don't have bureaucracy when it comes to endless money for other countries? But here, they're being taxed on reimbursement money. Here, you got to wait 3 hours online to be reimbursed for an air purifier. Yeah, from Norfolk Southern. There should be a straight, frankly, internet system where you put in the receipt digitally, you put in your address, you put in the amount, and your account gets debited by Norfolk Southern. It's that simple.
Ridiculous. No, it is, and this relates not directly to the assistance center here, but I just saw Aaron Bragg was in the comments, and he made a comment about the person at that clinic, the doctor who was speaking, saying that it's very likely from mental health. More kind of gaslighting here. That woman is the director of the clinic. I'll work to confirm that, but I trust Aaron's judgment here in the chat here that she's the director of that clinic. So, I mean,
it kind of reminds me, Louis, I don't know if you've ever seen one of these movies where they're using people as lab rats, but they're lying to them. So they bring you in and they tell you, oh no, the sensors and all that, we're actually testing you for this harmless and innocuous thing, but they're really taking their DNA and doing this crazy shit. That's what I'm getting a vibe here. Because I've heard from people in Flint, and we've heard from people here, we're guinea pigs, we're lab rats. And that's really the vibe you're getting. And why this is so important. Do you think the people in Richmond, Indiana thought they were going to have a problem 2 days ago? Do you think the people in East Palestine, Ohio thought they were going to have a problem 69 days ago? No. This kind of stuff could happen to any of us, anywhere. New Jersey right now has massive wildfires, not California, New Jersey. That's toxic. We live in the United Corporations of America, folks. I don't have the flag for no reason. By the way, get your United Corporations of America shirt at statuscoup.com/store. I am shameless enough to do that. statuscoup.com/store. Get your United Corporations of America shirt in time for the summer. But it's just any of this shit could happen. We're talking train derailments. We're talking plant explosions, uranium mines, coal mines. America is a beautiful place. It's also a highly, highly contaminated place. It's also a place where, I think that resistance liberals, got it a little twisted, and they thought the EPA suddenly became corrupt under Donald Trump. Flint happened before Donald Trump. I could tell you the EPA has had massive problems before and under Democratic presidents, because it's not really the party as much as the system.
And at the end of the day, under a Democratic president. I mean, Biden's been president for 2.5 years at this point.
Right. And I just, I got to say, I just worry about people, because these are all good people. They're not getting a temporary pause on their mortgages in East Palestine or Richmond, Indiana. If you live next to this inferno, they're not getting like, yeah, your job's going to be understanding and take a little time off paid. Hey, we'll pay for you to go on a vacation to treat your mental health. I just worry about, I don't care if you're a Republican, progressive. I mean, I'm progressive. I don't care what you are. People, you either believe in the collective. You believe that we are a collective. You believe that we're all in this together, and we should try and, if accidents happen, that you treat people the way you would want to be treated, and you go above and beyond to make them whole, and you tell them the truth, even if the truth is this is a fucking catastrophe, and frankly, we don't even know if it's ever going to be safe for you to live in this place again, and you give them the money required to make the choice to leave. Hopefully, the people of Richmond, Indiana, it's not as bad as East Palestine, but I don't know. All I know is what I'm looking at and what experts are telling me. When Erin Brockovich tells me there's hundreds of chemicals in that plume, I believe her. I also want to say, the chemist I've been talking to said, not to bother you, but another thing they're not mentioning is that these thresholds or limits that they test for the environmental testing does not necessarily match what is safe in the health aspect. From your lips to God's ears. This is so important. The thresholds that the EPA put out as what they call their action levels or their levels of concern are not actually based on public health. Let me repeat that. In Flint or anywhere else, when they tell you, oh, if you have under 15 parts per billion of lead, that's acceptable. They blew that out of their ass. There is no acceptable level of lead in your water, particularly for children, but anybody really. And in the case of dioxins or name it, vinyl chloride, ethyl hexyl acrylate, all the things they have. And that's why, like environmental watchdogs, their websites, they will have it much lower what is acceptable because they actually have environmental experts that have not been seized by industry. The Environmental Protection Agent might as well be the it's a racket. So these levels that they're telling residents and they're telling the media, oh, it's not a concern. The EPA is not concerned with these levels. It's safe, are not based on public health. Meaning the health or human health aspect has a lower threshold for exposure because it focuses on the health impacts and considers accumulation in time spent in an area. Like folks who can't get out of the contaminated area and are spending much more time there. So they may not be super high illegal levels. However, when you live there for a long period of time, you're becoming exposed to something over a long period of time, even if it's smaller doses. This is the same thing for fracking. If you live next to where a lot of fracking is going on. Why do you think Native American reservations have such high cancer rates? Because a lot of them are right next to mining and fracking. Because they dump this shit on the backgrounds of indigenous people, poor black and brown people, and now, frankly, poor white people. I could go on forever. I'm really starting to vibe this toxic tour idea. I don't know if Erin Brockovich will do it.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there's
I don't know if Jerry will
let
me do it either because we got to protect health.
Yeah.
But, I don't know if my wife will let me do it.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of a toxic tour. Maybe summer 2023.
Could be
where
the
we
year.
go to a lot of these communities, maybe some you haven't heard of, and we really drill in. I have people all the time reaching out from communities I just haven't had the time or bandwidth to cover, telling me horror stories. Kalamazoo, for example, a lot of people didn't know until we showed the video last week that a paper mill has been releasing toxic gas into a poor black community in Kalamazoo for over a decade. Now, suddenly, it's becoming a little bit more in the news. Why? At first, it was affecting the poor black part of Kalamazoo. Now it's spreading to the white part of Kalamazoo. Suddenly, the news is covering
it's an issue.
Lewis, what are your parting thoughts? But besides begging people to sign up as Status Coup members so that we could afford more great reporting from Lewis, afford more on-the-ground reporting, 460 people still watching. I think some of you are not paying Status Coup members. think about on YouTube the amount of diarrhea content you get. Literally, the digital diarrhea of people putting out their content with reactionary takes on nonsense and bullshit. How much in-depth, independent, investigative, on-the-ground reporting are you getting? Not a lot.
You're definitely not getting a lot. And it seems like in the comments, there's a lot of people saying they want the toxic tour. If you want the toxic tour, it's going to cost some money to make it happen. We want to get out and do it. StatusCoup.com/join. Literally as low as $5 a month. If you can afford $5 a month, that's skip 1 cup of coffee. If you go out to Starbucks or whatever, or your local coffee shop for it, skip it once. Have one less beer at your after work happy hour or something per month. That's it. That's all we're asking for. It might sound like a little bit. If it's too much for you, don't do it. We're not asking you to go broke for us, but if you can spare the $5 a month, it might not sound like a lot, but it goes a long way when hundreds and hundreds of you all come out and do it. StatusCoup.com is the way to do that. We want to continue to keep telling these stories, to be able to keep digging into these things, even when we're in between some of these reporting trips. So that is the way to do it. This whole thing blows my mind. It's a little disheartening to hear some of the statements from the EPA that we heard already today from Indiana. All of it feeling a little too familiar to some of the things that I was hearing in East Palestine. I'm definitely going to continue to listen to this because I think that there's going to be a lot of concerns for folks, unfortunately, in Richmond, Indiana. How
hard is it to say we don't know?
Say it. I know we don't know is an okay answer to give at this stage in something like this. Don't lie to people. Don't tell people that you've got time to tell people that it is not safe to go back to their homes inside of that half a mile radius. Don't make the mistake again of telling people it's safe to go back until you know that it's safe to go back. Go in, use the appropriate testing devices in these homes, use multiple testing devices in these homes, swab surfaces, collect them, send them to an actual lab. Don't walk in with a magic wand, one device PID detector that isn't going to pick up everything that's in there. And you know that the EPA knows that device is not going to pick up everything that could potentially have been burned inside of this recycling plant or whatever it may have been. They know that device isn't going to do it. Don't go in there with that device. Go in there with that device and then several others that are going to test for a wider range of chemicals. Swab the surfaces, do the tests the right way. Don't rush this. Make sure that it is actually safe for people in this neighborhood to go back in time. It might turn out that it is by some chance that it is safe, but actually go and do the tests, present the information in a consumable way, not some mess like you've been doing in East Palestine, not according to me, but according to experts, that it was a mess the way they did it there. You've got a chance to course correct here and do this the right way. I'm not holding my breath that it's going to happen, but you just learned the lesson over the last 2 months that the EPA cannot think that they've done a good job in East Palestine. Behind the scenes, they cannot think that that's been a smooth system. Hopefully we see a course correction here. I'm not holding my breath for it, but yeah.
And widen the evacuation zone. Come on. Don't let people who are a mile away or a mile and a half think, you're good. You could stay in your home. Just close the windows, keep your pets inside. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What kind of nonsense.
I mean,
by the way, I kept this up because this is a good reminder. We say $5, but we do have higher plans. You can, as a Status Coup member, if you're at $5 now, you can upgrade to a higher level. We do get that occasionally. So if you're a $5 member, you could upgrade to $10. Or if some people are signed up as free members, which you don't really get the perks, but we get your email. You can change from a free member to a $5 member. Colin, how do they do that? Since I teased it, how do they upgrade?
Yeah, if you're already a member on the new member website, StatusCoupMember.com, you just go there, and when you're logged in, you click your profile icon in the top right and click View Profile, I believe it is. It's a profile button, and then from there you can see your membership level, and right next to it is a little change button, and you can switch to $5, $10, $20. If you're already a paying member and you're like, I don't want to cancel, I just need to take a month off, you can just switch to free for a month or however long you need and switch back. That way you don't have to create a new account or anything like that.
Colin, don't tell people to switch. Please. Anyway,
StatusCoupMember.com. If you're already a member and you want to adjust your settings to bump up to a higher level of membership, that's the way to do it.
All right. So we'll stay on this. If you are a resident in Richmond, Indiana, the surrounding areas, if you have any information, even if you don't want to come on camera, but you want to send us video information, this is how we break a lot of our stories directly from residents who are telling us, yeah, the local news is just regurgitating what the EPA says, what the state health department says. But residents give us a lot of our news from East Palestine and elsewhere. Please email us, info@statuscoup.com, info@statuscoup.com. And if you want, we would love to interview residents in the Richmond area, surrounding areas. Tell us what you're experiencing there. Or if you just have information, info@statuscoup.com. Please send us information. I don't think we're going to do our normal 5 o'clock live stream because this went a little longer and I have other work to do.
Don't forget super chats.
Oh, we will read super chats, but we'll probably have something to post at 5 o'clock, but we won't be live. As a reminder, if you haven't seen it, definitely check out our live stream we did yesterday from Rutgers University. It was literally thousands of students were out with faculty on strike, which was really awesome to see. It kind of expands on the Starbucks workers you've seen on strike, the Amazon workers you've seen on strike, the union organizing. This is happening at colleges too, so that's great to see. Let's read some super chats here. Thank you. Christina Suazo, 1999. This is absolutely sick. Thank you so much for staying on this story. Thank you for the kind super chat. Das Bos Flies, 599 euros. Ancient technology causing devastating accidents. The U.S. infrastructure could really use a Build Back Better on steroids bill. And I don't want to trigger anybody who's, anti-China. China has been improving its infrastructure for the last 10, 15 years. High-speed rail, awesome airports, subsidies to folks, to citizens for electric vehicles, like significantly more than we give for electric anything. They understand bad infrastructure is bad. There's a domino effect. Absolutely. Humorous, $10. The ignorance of this world boggles my mind. If you don't want all these chemicals burning in your backyards, demand glass again instead of a disposable society. You choose this, folks. Thank you, humorous. Sassy but classy, 1999. Absolutely unacceptable. Once again, questions not getting answered, or put the question on to the next speaker. That's called CYA, cover your ass. Would love to know your real thoughts behind all this. Well, I hope we've given it to you.
Yeah, I think you got plenty of that.
Kylie is over $10. As a biomed and former oil gas researcher and epidemiologist, poor communication is a feature, not a bug. Corporatized Biden administration donors have purchased the weaponized incompetence of these agencies. It's true, and not just Biden administration. Let's be clear. Sorry if you're a Trump guy here or gal. Donald Trump, after saying he was going to drain the swamp, named the CEO of ExxonMobil as his Secretary of State. So let's not, Biden is plenty corrupt. The Democratic Party is plenty corrupt. So is the Republican Party. You're not naming the CEO of ExxonMobil to drain anything. That's like adding gators to the swamp. Okay. Thank you for the super chat. Cyber Hobbit, $20. Thanks for your continued coverage of this. All responsible pricks need to move in wherever they destroy and deal with it. Every last one of them, just disgusting. Keep it up. And Lewis, by the way, if you have spare time later, look into the owner of this plant.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
IKE 5021, $10. Thanks for covering this in my hometown. My bro lives nearby. Tell your bro to email us, info@statuscoup.com. We'd love to talk to him or her or him. Hubs became a new member. Thank you, Hubs. Is there a GoFundMe for the East Palestine, Ohio residents? Yeah, we actually did a Substack a couple weeks ago with various GoFundMes. If you email us, we will try to send that to you.
Or you can subscribe to our Substack as well. And if you scroll down a bit, it'll be there. But statuscoup.substack.com.
You're getting so good at the plugs. Normally I have to remind people you're a plug machine. Yes, sign up for our Substack, which you could sign up for free. statuscoup.substack.com. And if you scroll down, you'll find a post probably 2 or 3 weeks ago where we have a bunch of the GoFundMes. Thank you. Let me make sure I didn't miss any signups here. All right. Thanks for watching. We're not going to be live at 5, but we'll probably post something. We'll be back at it tomorrow, likely with updates from Richmond and wherever else. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Lewis. Thank you, Colin. And we'll see you a bit later.